Okay, so last class we kind of uh, fast forwarded into a lot of these topics that we didn't really slowly get into yet. So variables, everyone should understand by now. It should be easy. Okay, variables, data types. We got the primitive data type, the simple things like strings and numbers and true and false and null and undefined, and then objects. Okay, so we kind of understand objects now, I think, arrays and objects. Object is kind of a blanket term for non-primitives, but it also just could mean an object. That's the thing that's with curly brackets and key value pair separated by commas. Okay, but object also means a non-primitive in JavaScript, so it could be kind of confusing. And we learned about arrays. Arrays are a list of things. We know in JavaScript a lot of things have methods or built-in functions. So arrays got a whole lot of built-in methods. I provided a list of them here. We've used a few. They're kind of easy, some of them to use, like pop and push. Pretty simple. Add something to the end of a list or remove something from the end and return it. We also have um, so these deal with the end of an array, pop and push. Pop removes, push adds to the end. You also have the opposite of that, unshift, which adds something to the beginning of an array, and then shift, which removes something from the beginning of an array. So if you're not trying to remove the last item, but the first one, there's shift and unshift for that. Okay. And we used for each to loop through something, and looping just means run a function, just repeat a set of instructions once for every item in a list. Okay. And then came up with this little project for assignment 2 where you could add stuff in a form and click add item, and then it'll just add it to the list. So let's break down what's going on here, because again I kind of went through it a little bit fast last class. So um, on the HTML side, it's kind of simple. We just have an input. It's going to be a text input, so HTML element lets you type in text into it. Gave it an ID of item input and a placeholder of enter grocery item, so you know what to type in there. We also have a button called with the ID of add item button, and it just says add item on it. So and we also have this heading here and an unordered list, and this unordered list is empty, but normally ULs or OLs will have LIs inside for each list item. We left it blank because we're going to use JavaScript from this app.js to populate that list. So the first thing we did is we created an empty array called groceries. This is going to be the array that populates that unordered list. So we also grab all those HTML elements, the item input, this guy, got the groceries list, just this guy, and a button to add items. Okay, and we added an event listener to the add items button. And so I should cover maybe event listeners a little bit better. Event listeners are useful for when you want to interact with something on an HTML document. Here we're using click, so we're saying add an event listener to the add item button, and that event is going to be a click. So it's going to listen for any clicks that we have on that. And then there's a comma here. So again, it's a built-in function. You know this is a function because it's got the parentheses after it. That's usually a dead giveaway that this is a function, right? It's a name of the function plus parentheses. That's how you execute a function. And this function, add event listener, takes in two arguments. One is what event you're gonna listen for, and that's gonna be click. And the second argument is the callback function. So we call these callback functions whenever you put a function as an argument inside another function. We call that a callback function because once you call this function, it calls the other function, right? So, and it's the only time where you don't put the parentheses after the function, because if you do, it'll execute immediately without listening for the click. So as soon as JavaScript starts reading from the top down and it gets to this, if it sees the parentheses, it's just gonna call add item. It's not gonna wait for a click. So again, this is the only situation where you write a function name without the parentheses. Okay. So why don't we practice a few other event listeners by just playing around in the browser. So just open any HTML document and click inspect and then go to the console and try something. We're gonna do a couple things here. We're gonna manipulate the CSS on this page. So I'm on a Google page right now, and if we look at the elements and then you, let's say, look at, let's click on body, for example, you'll see that the body has a element style here, background color, and it's just this blue color. You could mess with this color and change it through here if you wanted. Okay, but let's do it with JavaScript. We'll go to the console and we're gonna have to target the HTML body. Okay, the HTML body is a little bit special compared to the other HTML elements on this page. The reason why it's special is because it's easier to access. You could just say document.body and then .style dot background color equals, say, red. You can change the styles that way. Okay, unlike other elements like the ones that we had to use the get element by ID for all of these, right? You can't get the item input, the groceries list. Any other element like an H1 input button, none of those can be accessed that easily. It's only the body that you can say document.body and it'll know what you're talking about. Okay, so document.body.style.background color equals red, and we can change the color. Now let's try, let me refresh the page to get it back to normal. Let's try adding an event listener to change the color of the page instead of just changing it without any event. So let's do document dot body dot add event listener. Oops, I thought it would auto complete. Add event listener, and let's look at a list of all events that we can call. So document dot event listener events list. Let's see, I don't have them memorized, but let's see what, besides click, what else do we have? Where's the list? Okay, HTML DOM events. W3 Schools always has the clearest examples and explanations. So here we go. Event, there's abort, after print, animation end, animation iteration. Okay, there's a whole bunch of them. Blur, can play, there's click, but we have things like drag, drag start, drag end. There should be mouse, yeah, mouse down, mouse enter, mouse leave, mouse move, mouse over, mouse out. Why don't we do a mouse over and a mouse out? So how about when we mouse over the document, it changes color, and we mouse out, it changes back. We can do that. So let's add mouse over. Okay, and then for the callback function, which in this case was add item, but add item, we defined add item. We created a function called add item like this, and then we called it like this. But remember, you could also just call a function an anonymous function, which means function with no name that you just define directly in here. So I'll leave this one alone, but in our browser, I'm gonna do it this way. And you could write function, do it this way, and inside the curly brackets, write your function. You could also do it this way, which is an arrow function, kind of shorten it. So I'll say, we have access to one more thing. Whenever you call an event listener on an object, such as the body in this case, you could put in an event. So anytime you add an event listener, since there's this event happening, you're also going to have the event automatically added as an argument for the event listener callback function. So in here too, if I wanted to access this event that's happening, right now I'm not doing anything with it, so I just put the function directly here, but I could have also set it like this. If I did this, I would have to call it. It's a little bit different. So here you're just, the function is directly added there, but you could also create another anonymous function here, and in that anonymous function I could call add item. This should work exactly the same. Let's try it. Yeah, it still works the same. But the only reason you would want to do this again is to pass this event object. You could call it E or event. Usually you'll put E just because it's shorter. But the event has a whole bunch of stuff attached to it. If you want to see it, you could say, instead of E add item, I could say maybe add some curly brackets, because now we're gonna have a second line of code here. Kind of reformat this so it's easier to understand. So maybe another thing we could do is console.log E, if you want to see what that event looks like. So we're still going to add item, but before I add item, I'm also going to console log the event, just so you guys could see it. I keep clicking the wrong one. Okay, so I'm going to open up the inspect here so we could see the console. just add milk here, click add. Okay, we added our milk, but we also added a console log over here, and this right here, it says pointer event. So that's the event that we captured. So we see it's a pointer event, and if you open it up, you can see it has all these properties. Is trusted, bubbles, buttons. Um, let's see which one's useful here. There's things like movement X, movement Y, offset X, offset Y. Basically the location that you clicked, or I don't know if it's the where your mouse is, or might be the mouse position. Right now it's 35 and 6. So what if I click again? We've got a new pointer event. Now it's 58 and 12. So 35 and 6, and then there's page X, page Y. Those are also different, I think, 240, 241. So it has to do with exactly where you clicked. So the position of your mouse is also going to affect these things. Right, and then there should also be a target. You see here, target, button, hashtag, add item button. So the event also knows the target of the event. In this case, it knows that that button is the target. So what you could do, if you didn't, so in this case, we could, let me go back to this one. In this case, when we're clicking the body of the document, and I'm adding an event listener, mouse over, I could directly say what I want to do here is maybe pass in an anonymous function and say document dot body dot style dot background color equals yellow or something. And this should work. Right? Are we forgetting anything? Okay, mouse over, document.body.style.background color. We'll set it to yellow as soon as I mouse over. But let's add another one. This time we'll do mouse out. Call another anonymous function. Say document.body.style background color equals whatever blue. Okay, I'm gonna press enter. Oops. Before I do, let's make sure there's no spelling mistakes. Okay, let's see what happens if I mouse over the document. Turns yellow. When I leave, it turns blue. So every time I hover over that, it's gonna turn yellow, and I mouse out, it'll turn blue. But here's what you could do with the event. So here I'm writing document.body.style.background color equals yellow, but I could also change, instead of document.body, I could say I could pass in the event, and I could say event.target.style event.target.style.background color equals blue. Oh wait, it didn't work. E.target I wonder why that one didn't work. Document.body.add event listener, mouse over, E. Why don't we console log the E? Okay, so I'm gonna add a curly brackets here because I expected that to work, but it didn't. So we're passing the event, and let's do console dot log event. Okay, so we have a mouse event when I hovered over it. Where's the target? Ooh, okay, so there's the problem. So when I hovered over it, the target wasn't the body, it was something called NTP app. Um, yeah, that's the problem. Because there's so of course there's stuff on top of the body. When you hover over this, you're not just on the body, you're on, in this case, this thing, NTP app, some random container here. That's what I actually interacted with, so that's why the body didn't change color. But it would work if we did it on a button though. Like if I actually use the click instead of a hover, because then it would be more clear what your target is. So we could try it on the add item button. Do the same thing. Um, in this case, maybe I could do mouse over and mouse out because there's no random other elements here. I mean, I might interact with one of these other elements, but let's try, okay, instead of document.body, let's do, um, now I have to actually use uh, one of those methods to actually get the element. So, but then again, we also already did that in here, right? We already have item input, groceries list, and add item button. If I check add item button, we already have it, so I don't have to do get element by ID again. So I'll just do add item button dot add event listener mouse over, and add item button dot add event listener mouse out, and then we'll do event target dot style dot background. So now instead of the background, it'll change the color of the button. You can see here now the target is the button, so the button is what changes color. So this can be useful because um, well, it's useful in this case actually because we're saying, well, actually never mind, we're not really using the event in this case. Instead we're using the index in a similar way kind of, because these grocery items have a button on them. Oh no, they don't have a button. I deleted it. Used to have a delete button. So for that delete button, you're gonna need to be able to use the event target, because let's say you have a bunch of items in here. I can't write a function for every single item in the list, right? I can't say when I click the delete button, delete document.body.get at this element specifically. You could use the index of the item in the array kind of Say you click a button, um, but even then, I don't know, it would be kind of difficult. But let's try adding a delete button and then we'll see how it works. So first let's make sure you understand this part. So you get what click event and other events look like, and you know that you can pass an event object through a click event. A lot of times you'll see this e.prevent default. You'll mostly see this when you're like submitting a form and you don't want the form to actually submit because you want to handle it with JavaScript instead. So say we had a form. Forms have this action attribute, and the action attribute is the page that you want to navigate to or the file that you want to handle the data from the form. So let's say I put I don't know, just handle.js or something. Or let's put .html. I wonder what the difference will be. So put that, and then let's say I put the input in here and a button in there. The thing is, when you have a form and you have a submit button, let's say this button type was submit. Look what happens. See that it refreshes and then it tries to go to handle.html or handle.js. See, cannot get handle.js. So it tries to navigate away. Even if I don't put anything, even if I just leave that blank, don't put an action, it's still gonna refresh the page. You see that? So it's refreshing the page and we're losing our milk. And a lot of times you'll see, in this case, add item button dot add event listener click. Maybe if you do e.prevent default, I'm not sure if that will work because I think we have to do, instead of add event listener on the button, you have to add event listener on the form. Dot query selector form. So for whenever you put the button in a form, you could either listen for clicking on the button or you can listen to the form being submitted. When the form is submitted, that's when it refreshes. So if you do event.prevent default, it won't refresh. So a lot of times you'll see that event.prevent default on a form submission. I'm not sure if it makes a difference on this because the event is a button click instead of a form submission, so it might be different. But let's try it. Yeah, that also works. It prevents the page from refreshing. But you could also do it this way. Okay, except it doesn't actually populate the form when we do it that way. Wonder what the reason for that is. Still calling add item. Not sure. Get query selector form, add event listener, submit, add item. Let's check what's happening in the background. Oh, we have an error, that's why. Get query selector is not a function. Oh yeah, it's it's query selector, not get query selector. That's why it's not working. There we go. Okay, but we're preventing the page from refreshing. And actually, just want to double check, is the page still refreshing if I do it this way? How do we check? What's a good way to check? Because it happens so fast, it's really hard to tell if it actually refreshed or not. Sometimes you could kind of see this thing showing an X real fast, but even if I click refresh, it doesn't show. So I think a sure way to know if your page is refreshing is to check the network tab and see if it's loading stuff again. Right, if I clear that and I click this, it's gonna reload. If I type something in here and click add item, nothing happens there, so we know it didn't actually reload. But why don't you guys, let me give you guys like, I don't know, 5 minutes to try some of this stuff. Let me know if you have questions. Just play around with events and the event listener. Try changing something on the page. I'll leave this up, so if you want, you could copy this one and try to do that. And let me pause this. Okay, what should we look at next? So, if we're gonna try to add a delete button, we're gonna need to create. I'm gonna have to render a delete button in here, right? So we're creating an element, a list item element, and we're adding it into the unordered list. We also need to create a delete button and add it inside the li. So each list item will have, oops, not there. So each list item in here, right now we're just populating it with whatever I'm adding, like milk. But we should also add a button in here. Maybe just with an X on it. That will delete the list item. Okay, so first thing is to add that button. So we can say let button equal document.createElement button. Button.text content equals delete if we want the button to say delete, or we could put an X there, or we could, I think what is it, and times. That will look a little bit nicer than just the letter X. I'll put an actual like cross multiplication sign. So for each item, we're not only adding an li, but we're also going to create a button. And we're going to say the text content of that is going to be this x. li.text content is going to equal item, right? And that's, if I, let's go back a second before I add that. Let's make sure we understand what this is doing. It's creating the li element. The text content of the li element is going to be the item from the list that we create. So this groceries list. For each item in the groceries list, the li's text content is going to be that item. And then groceries list, we're going to append child. So append child just means add the element. And the element that we want to add is the li element. And where we're adding it is the groceries list, which again, groceries list is the ul. This ul with the ID of groceries list. Makes sense? Okay, let's move on. Bring these back. So in addition to the li, we're going to create this button with the x on it, and we want to append the button to the li. So li text content equals item, but let's also do li dot append child button, so we add that button to there. Okay, I mean for now let's just look at it, see if at least the x is there. It is when we add a new item. The original milk there is still there. I think because why is that still there? Because I put milk in here, that's why. Let's delete that. Okay, but you see it doesn't look good, and it actually literally says end times instead of showing me the x, and I know why. Because we put button.text content equals end times. Text content will just take whatever you put there and translate it directly into literal text. That's not what we want. So instead of button.text content, we should say button.inner HTML equals end times. Let's try that. Button.inner HTML equals end times. There we go. Now we got the little X. We need a little bit of space between them. So maybe inner HTML equals and non-breaking space. This is just a space in HTML if you just want a space, like that type of space, but you want more than one space, you could do that. Oh wait, they put it inside the button. That's not what we want. I meant to put that before the button. So maybe, let's see, li text content equals item. Why don't we do plus a space? Just do it that way. So after the item, we'll add a little space, and then we'll add the button. There we go. Cool. And we also don't need any of the the styles on the button. Like we don't need the gray box, but I would use CSS to handle that. So we'll ignore that for now because it's not JavaScript. But now we gotta figure out how we're gonna make it delete this. When we click one of these items, we need to delete the item. So we gotta look at when groceries list gets populated. At the end of the day, this list is this li, or this array is what creates the list. So that's the source of the list. So when are we adding stuff to the groceries list? We're doing it when we click add item. We're checking let item equal item input dot value. So the whatever the input says, that's going to be the new item that we add. So we're checking if there's an item, groceries dot push item. So we're pushing stuff into that array. Uh-oh, 1 second. My headphones just said battery low. Do I have a charger here? Okay, I got it plugged in, hopefully charging. Okay, so we add the item and then we change the input value to be blank so it doesn't just stay there after we click on it, right? That's why this clears after I click here. The reason that's clearing is because we're saying item.input value equals blank. Right, but at the end of the day, that's what we're adding to, and that's what we need to remove from if we want to update the list. Okay, so we need another function called remove item, which will do the opposite of this. But how are we going to do it? Well, the way we're going to do it is by using the event. Right, because each item is going to have its own button, and wait, how are we going to do it? As a button, we click the button, but removing the li is not going to be our solution. If we just remove the list item, it's just going to regenerate again because the array is what creates the list, and every time we add or remove stuff from the array, a new list item will get created and will get added. So just removing the element itself is not going to help. We have to actually remove the item from the array. And that's going to be the hard part. We're going to have to either get the index of the item. Let's say it's like milk, eggs. All right, the item of milk would be 0, and then we'd have to splice. We're not going to use pop. Remember, pop removes the last item from the array, and that's not really going to be useful because what if you're not removing the last item? You're removing something from the middle. So we can't use the pop method. Instead, kind of saw it flash for a second here. There's another thing called splice. And if we look at our notes here, where's splice? We got slice, and there should be a splice here. There it is, splice. So splice adds, removes elements from an array, and when you're splicing, you could choose the index to remove from and then how many items you want to remove. So if we could get the index, we'd be able to remove it. So how are we going to figure out the index of the item that we're trying to remove? When we call this remove item function, it's going to take in the index, it's going to remove it, and then it's going to render the list again. We render a list, but we have to figure out how to pass that index. So here, let's see, remove item, we got to call that on the button. Right, so we add the button, we create the button, we set the inner HTML to the X. We also have to add an event listener to it. Oh, and we could just do it like this. We have the index here. So when we looped through, when we created, when we're looping through the array, we have the index, and that's why we have it here. There's another thing you can add. You have the item itself with the for each. You could also get the index. So when you're looping through something, we're looping through the array here. Not only do we have access to like what the item is, milk, egg, bread, butter, that's what the item is, but we can also get the index 0, 1, 2, 3 just by passing in a second argument into the for each. The first thing will be the item itself, and this will be the index. So in this for each, when we're looping through and actually creating the list items, we also have access to the index. And if we're adding the event listener to remove the item, we still have that index, so we could just pass it here to the remove item function, and the remove item function here will take that index and it'll splice that groceries list at the index, remove one item from there, and then re-render the list. So that should hopefully work. Let's see if it actually works. Let's add that. Wait, it didn't add, so we probably have an error. Milk is not defined. Uh-oh, I forgot to delete these. Try that again. So add milk. Okay, we got the milk added. Let's try eggs. I don't know. Jalapeno. Let's click on eggs because it's in the middle and see if it gets removed. Yeah. Click jalapenos. Got removed. Milk. Got removed. Cool. And just to check if it works, yeah, wherever I click, it removes the item. Another way we could have done this to make use of the event target, I think, is whenever we, let's say we created the groceries list, we have groceries, we're looping through, where's the loop? Oh, here. So when we're looping through the groceries, if we didn't have index here, oh, we kind of need the index. You could use the item name itself, but the problem is if it has spaces in it, it's not really gonna work. So we could do keep that there, remove item index, or we could do trying to figure out how we could make use of event target dot like class name or something. We could do this. We could say, I mean, it's pointless because this works fine, but let's say we didn't want to use the index. We could say remove item. We could keep index there, or let's replace it with the E. And then we could do E dot target dot ID. Okay. I want to leave this one alone because it works fine. I'm going to create another function. I'm not sure if this is exactly what I want to do. We could say groceries dot find index. You can say let index equal groceries dot find index item. If index is not equal to -1, in other words, if it actually found it, because you'll get -1 if you do a find index on something and it doesn't exist, you'll get -1. This is just checking if it's not -1, so it actually found it. And you could do groceries dot splice and render list. But this is again pointless because we could just pass the index directly. This is in case you didn't have the index. You could pass in something else, like maybe the item itself. Let's turn this off for a second. So remove item is going to take in an item. So when we call remove item, instead of passing in the index, we could pass in the item. That should still work. No, it didn't work. String eggs is not a function. Why is it trying to... Carrots is not a function. Why is it thinking it's a function? Okay, it works now. That's weird. I didn't change anything. Now it works. No idea why it didn't work the first time. Strange. Okay, anyway, let's take a break. Um, yeah, after the break, I gotta switch to the other class. It's Monday, so no new assignments today. Just practice what we've already learned and also check out the notes here. Try some of these array methods. Talked a little bit about functions, but maybe you should read through here to understand them more. And then, oh, we are kind of using if statements. I didn't really talk about if statements too much, but they're pretty easy to understand. An if statement is just a if keyword's got a condition, either true or false. It'll execute if true, and it won't do anything if not. If you have an else statement, it'll do the else instead of the if. If this is false, it'll do this. And you got else ifs if you want to check multiple conditions. And then you've got ooh, maybe we should go over this one, checking a leap year. But I think we'll have time next class for that. Okay, anyways, let's take a break. Pause this. Alright, so before I get into MongoDB, we gotta talk about databases. Okay, so I'm assuming you can kind of guess what a database is, even if you've never used it before. A database is where you save data, so things like usernames, passwords, phone numbers, login information, um, anything like movies, shoes, products, prices, all that stuff gets saved in a database, right? And there's different kinds of databases out there. The most common type of database you've probably seen are like spreadsheets. These are called SQL databases, or structured query language. Basically, it's a type of database that's designed so that you can easily query the data, or retrieve data and make updates and changes. Okay, so an SQL database, let's see if there's a good example. Um, Here's an example. So say you have a table called customers. Okay, table is going to be for a related bunch of data. So customer data, for example, would be in a customers table, right? And each customer has a customer ID, first name, last name, phone, and country. So that customer ID, first name, last name, phone, country, those are going to be your columns. So at the very top of the database, you have your columns. And then each of these rows is going to belong to one customer. So here's customer 1. It has an ID of 1. Name is going to be John. Last name Doe. Phone number and country. So you have tables for customers. You got your columns that you can retrieve. Let's say you want to get, I don't know, the phone number for a customer. Then you could do a query um, like get customers customer ID where, or customer phone where customer ID equals 2, for example, right? Maybe I should, here, I know there's like a website you can try. Well, there's W3 schools, W3 schools, SQL. If you want to learn SQL, which you should, if you're into programming, especially if you're going to do back-end stuff. Here's an example query from a SQL structured query language, and here's an example of a query. Select all from customers. This would just get you all customers. So if we run the SQL query, here it gives you all these customers. Each customer has an ID, name, contact, address, city, postal code. But if you want to do like only customer where, I don't know, the ID is 5, it's going to be called customer ID. Then you could do select all from customers where, and it doesn't have to be capital, at least in most databases. I don't think it matters, but where customer ID equals 5, let's say. Like, click run query, we only get this customer. Okay. Or where customer ID I don't think greater or less than. I don't think you could use. There's a, well, yeah, that works too. Less than 5 gets us all these. Or instead of select all, you could do select city, right? And it'll just give you Berlin, Mexico, London. So anyway, that's an example of SQL statement with a SQL database. Okay, so SQL database, just picture it as like an Excel sheet, tables. But MongoDB is not going to be that. Where SQL uses tables, um, NoSQL or MongoDB is going to use JSON. So instead of a customer's table, you're going to have a, what would this be called? A customer's, well, yeah, it would still be called a database. Still have a customer database. Um, but the table name, instead of a table, is going to be called a collection. So here's my, this is MongoDB after I already signed up, and I created a sample. Whenever you're signing up for MongoDB, you're gonna have to create a cluster. Okay, cluster is basically your database, and then inside the cluster, you're gonna have, well, here's my sample. I guess, I don't know. It seems like it gave me like a movies database as a sample, but you can see here we've got collection names. So each of these collection names, comments, movies, embedded movies, sessions, theaters. Click on movies. You can see here it returns a bunch of movie data. So each movie has an ID, a plot, a genre, or genres, because it could fit in more than one genre. A runtime, cast. Got a poster image. But anyways, um, that's gonna be the equivalent of a table, basically. Okay, I mean, let's look at the picture here. So instead of columns, you have key values or keys, ID, name, age. So you're still going to have the same, you could still put the same type of data. It's just going to be structured a little bit differently. So querying it is going to be a little bit different. Okay, so you're not going to have these select all from customers anymore. If you're doing, let's see if W3 schools, does it have a NoSQL? show us an example of, uh-oh, exit page. This page crashed. Let me close it. Okay, W3 schools. There you go. It's got a MongoDB tutorial, which is great. So again, MongoDB is a document database, stores data in a type of JSON format called BSON. I mean, just think of it as JSON. Okay, just it has its own name, but it's JSON. Example document, basically title, body, likes. So it's like a row. A document is a row in a table. And then this is the way you would query stuff. So instead of using the select statements, you use db and then dot posts, dot find. It's a little bit more like JavaScript, using the dot notation and then methods like find instead of select this and that. So that's the difference between a SQL database and a NoSQL database. Honestly, you have to I mean, for a simple thing, most situations it really doesn't matter which one you use. The only time you really like start trying to decide should I use a SQL database or NoSQL database is if you're gonna have a lot of data and I don't know, you gotta like do tests, figure out which one is quicker, right? Because if you're gonna be serving, maybe you have a website with movies on it, and you know if it's a SQL database, it might be slower than if it's a non-SQL database for people to try to get information. You know, it would make the difference in how fast your website loads. But I don't know which one's faster. I mean, there's so many different technologies, different types of SQL databases or non-SQL databases that I can't say which one's better. Okay, but Mongo or non-SQL is a little bit newer, so you know, we'll try to use, and plus we have, you know, MongoDB is free, so we'll do MongoDB or NoSQL in this case. Right, so to get started though, you're gonna have to first sign up for MongoDB, and then I think it'll make you create a cluster the first time you do it. Create a database. Let's go to my home page. We got this one project that it created for me by default. I think everyone's gonna have a project 0 by default when you sign up. And then let's see, we click project 0. Okay, and we can see here's the database. We've got clusters. Click on clusters. Cluster 0. And it says here sample data sets successfully loaded. Access it in collections or by connecting with MongoDB shell. So that sample data that it gave me, I can access it by clicking browse collections. And then yeah, it brings me here to these movies. Click cluster 0. Not sure where this takes you. Another thing that's going to be important here is you're going to have to also set up data or network access. If you go to network access, if you click edit, there's going to be a button here that says, well, if you want to only be able to access this from your home computer, your IP address, you could do add current IP address. By default, I think it'll be that. But then if you do have your current IP address here, there's also going to be a button up here that says use any IP address. And that's what I did. I clicked use any, and it put a bunch of zeros here. So basically I can access this database from anywhere as long as I have the connection string, which is another thing you're gonna need. So how do we get the connection string? Let's go back to clusters, and maybe if I click connect, I can see here how do you want to connect. There's different ways we can connect. We're gonna use drivers. Okay, so if you see this screen, connect to a cluster, the first time you create it, it's gonna probably show you this. You're gonna want to do drivers because we're gonna use Node.js and we're gonna install Mongoose. We're gonna install MongoDB with npm install MongoDB, and then we're gonna do npm install Mongoose. We're gonna need both of those things. Um, if you install MongoDB, you could connect with just that, but Mongoose is just something on top of it that's gonna make it a little bit easier to connect. Okay, kind of like how we use fetch instead of the XML HTTP request thing. Fetch is just shorter way of doing it, so Mongoose will be a shorter way to connect instead of using the native MongoDB way. Okay, there's also here MongoDB for VS Code. Work with your data in MongoDB directly from your VS Code environment, but maybe we'll try that in another time. Gonna click drivers, and then you can see here it's gonna tell you what you need to do. npm install MongoDB. So if you've already signed up for MongoDB by going to cloud.mongodb.com or just Google MongoDB, sign up, and then it tells you here that we need to install MongoDB. I've already done it, so if I go here to VS Code, let me just create a new project here just to make sure it's available everywhere. Okay, so I'm here in a new folder called Mongo on my desktop, and I'm just gonna open the terminal, and then let's type in MongoDB -- version. MongoDB not found. I guess maybe it's not installed globally. See, how do we check if MongoDB? Check if MongoDB is installed. Well, I guess it would be in program files. So if you have it in your computer, your program files, nope, I don't see it there. Or maybe not in x86, but this one. Node.js, I don't see Mongo. Yeah, okay, maybe that's not the best way to check. Or maybe I don't have it installed, I'm just assuming I do. Anyways, just run npm install MongoDB. I'm gonna do that now. Probably don't have it installed. npm, oops. Well, I can't do npm install right now, can I? Because I haven't created an npm project yet. Brand new project, so we gotta do this again. npm, remember npm is the node project manager, and we're gonna say npm init dash y to just say yes to all the default settings. Okay, and all that does is give you this package.json, which keeps track of all your dependencies. When one of our dependencies is going to be um, Express. So remember we used Express last time. Express is how we create a server, something that we can, go to a URL and then it'll return something for you. So like a backend, okay, something you could send requests to. Because later we're gonna send requests to the server, and then when we send a request to the server, it's gonna in turn connect to MongoDB and then do something for us, like retrieve some data from the database or make some changes. So that's why we need Express. So npm I Express. npm I is just short for install. So npm I Express. What happens there? It adds Express in our dependencies. You also get this package lock JSON. You could ignore that, but basically, where this one has like my dependency Express, this one not only has the Express dependency, but it also shows you, it's a really long list. It's got the full list of dependencies, so it's like the dependency tree, like, because Express is also dependent on other dependencies. So it's not just Express, it's all these packages get installed. And then node modules is the actual downloaded uh, dependencies. So all the code that's required is going to be in node modules. These are just keeping track of what dependencies we have. Okay. So let's do npm install MongoDB, and let me just double check it was just that, right? Yeah, npm install MongoDB. There we go. So I guess I thought it was something that it gets installed on your computer. Actually, there is a way to, I think, install things just throughout your computer, so it's not just a dependency for the project, but just installed on your computer. But in this case, where it's just a dependency. So MongoDB is now part of our packages. What else do we need? And we need Mongoose as well to install Mongoose, because here's okay, so when I'm connecting to the cluster, after you do npm install MongoDB, here it says add your connection string into your application code. This is a connection string, basically like just like a key that represents your cluster. Just like, in when you're doing the Git projects, you have to copy um, your repository address. This is kind of like the address to your cluster. Okay, and if you click view full code sample, this is gonna be how you connect if you're just using MongoDB. It's kind of long, you gotta do all this stuff. There's your connection string, the address that I was just talking about. See, const URI equals, and there's the address. And then there's this part, create Mongo client with Mongo client options. You have to do all this stuff. Client equals Mongo client. All this stuff. Async try, await connect, await client.db. Finally, await client close, run, catch. So the reason why we're installing Mongoose is so we don't have to do all of this. Mongoose will just shorten this to like just a lot simpler way to connect. Okay, so we're not going to use this sample, so you could turn it off, but you will need this connection string, so copy that. And then let's go back to our project. Right now we don't have anything, we just installed a bunch of stuff. We installed Express and MongoDB. We initialized the project, but we don't have a entry point or anything. So our entry point, basically when you run the project, the file that we run is gonna be index.js. Okay, and here we're gonna bring in Express. Say const Express equals require Express. Const Mongoose. We don't have Mongoose installed yet. Let's bring in Mongoose. We only installed Express and MongoDB. Mongoose is the one that's supposed to make connecting to MongoDB easier. So we'll go to Mongoose. Not Mongoose Bicycles, but this one, Mongoose.js. And we're not going to download it from here. I just came here because when you come here, it tells you how to install it. And how to use it. So read the docs. Oh, never mind, it doesn't have the thing here. It tells you how to connect to it, but well, it's gonna be npm install mongoose, but I just want to make sure. Npm mongoose. So yeah, npm install mongoose. There's a website, npm node package. This one, the first one here. npmjs.com package. So this has like all the packages that you could have, that you could install. So like if you search for Express, you'll find it here. And then installation just tells you npm install Express. So if you search Mongoose, there's Mongoose. And we want to know how to install Mongoose. There it is, install npm I mongoose. Let's do that next. npm I mongoose. Cool, now we got a third dependency here, mongoose. So if we want to use mongoose, const mongoose equals require mongoose. Let's check if our Express server works. Let's do const. Okay, it keeps wanting to add this course thing, but we'll get into that later. This is what we want. Delete these guys. Const app equals Express. Remember, that's how we start Express. Create an instance of it. Call it app. Call Express and execute it with the parentheses. So here we're importing these things so they're available in our project, and here I'm creating an instance of the Express server with app, and we can specify our port. Remember, I listed a bunch of ports you could use the other day. I think it's listed in the assignment instructions, but 3000 or 333 or 5000, and there's a bunch of ports you can use. So we'll use port 3000, and then let's do app dot listen. So we're gonna listen on port 3000, and we're gonna console log server running on port. Let's just see if this works. Oh, actually, before we do that, let's also do app.get. So this just listens to port 3000 for any connections. We're going to be using port 3000 basically for this app. And then app.get / just means if you go to port 3000 / nothing, we want to send a message, hello world. Okay, we already did this the other day, but let's look at it again. We're going to do things a little bit different this time. So now we need to run this. So we could do node, oops, we could do node index.js, and that should run it. So server is running on port 3000. So we go to localhost :3000. It says hello world. So it works. But let's change this a little bit. Instead of, I'm going to press Control C to exit the server. Control C is to usually get out of any command that you're executing in the terminal. You press Control C, gets out of it. Okay, but we're gonna add, just to make this look more conventional, if you go to package.json, we have scripts here, right? There's one called test. If you do npm run test, you're gonna see error no test specified, because we didn't really set up tests. Okay, tests are something big companies like to do to make sure their product is working properly. They set up these tests, but I'm not gonna worry about that right now. Okay, instead we're gonna add one more thing here. Put a comma here, because this is JSON format. So comma. Let's add another script here called call start. And it's gonna do node index.js. So instead of me typing in node index.js, we're gonna do npm run start. That's gonna basically, missing script start. That's because I didn't save it. I forgot to hit Control S. Oops. Let's try that again. So I saved the file. Now I'll do npm run start, and it does the same thing. Server running on port 3000. So we're using this now. Let's add one more. This one's gonna be dev. So we're in development mode. We're gonna wanna let me delete this for a second. So remember what happened last time when the port is running and you let's say I refresh the page. It says hello world, right? Let me put these side by side. If I were to change the message here in index.js, instead of hello world, I wanted to say hello from node.js. We refresh, it still says hello world, because in order for like these changes, anytime you're working in a project like this, which requires a server to be running or something to be executing in the terminal like this, you have to stop the execution and then restart it to see the changes, right? And that's kind of annoying. I have to press Control C, and then I have to do npm run start again, and then refresh it. Now it says hello from Node.js. Well, there's something called NodeMon that we can install. Node monitor, basically. It's another dependency we'll add with npm install nodemon, and then I don't know if this is required, but the -d to save it as a dependency, a development dependency, because here we have a list of dependencies that are required for the project to work. Like when we if this was to go live, these would be the dependencies that the application needs. But nodemon, like stopping the server, starting it again to test it, that's something you only need during testing. It's not really something you need for the live product, right? So because of that, there's something called dev dependencies. If I do npm install nodemon -d with capital D, it's going to install nodemon, but it's going to add it as a dev dependency, as you can see here. It's not a regular dependency, it's a dev dependency. So it means it's not required for the final product. It's just something for us to use while we're testing. Okay, so that's what dev dependencies are, and nodemon should be a dev dependency because you only use it while you're testing. And here's how we're going to use it. Here in our scripts, we have test, we have start. I'm going to add a third one called dev. Like, we're in development mode right now, so we're going to say npm run dev. Oops. And if I do that, it should run nodemon. Uh-oh, I didn't save it again. Control S, try it again. There we go. So now it says nodemon. To restart at any time, press at any time enter RS. Watching paths, watching extensions. So it's watching. Basically, it's gonna check if I make any changes, it'll restart for me, so I don't have to press Control C and then run it again. That's the whole point of nodemon. So it'll just restart for you. So as an example, if it says hello from Node.js, let's say nodemon is working. I save this, refresh, and we see nodemon is working. We still have to refresh, but we don't have to restart the server. Okay, so it's just gonna be a little convenience for while you're working on your project. Cool. So Express for creating our server. Mongoose will be, we haven't used it yet, but it'll make it easier to connect to MongoDB. We start our Express app, call it app. We listen on port 3000. And I'm also going to change one more thing here, because here it says server is running on port 3000, right? I have to go to localhost :3000. Why don't I just, instead of server is running on port 3000, why don't we put here server is running on https or http :localhost and then :port, like that. That way I could just click this. Well, I have to control click it, but Oh wait, sorry, I did it wrong. No forward slash here. Okay, so you could just control click it and it'll just open instead of me having to manually type it every time. I could just click this now and it'll be a little bit easier to navigate to here. Okay, and if we go to app.get forward slash nodemon is working. If you go to, you could add more get paths here. You could say app.get forward slash API. Now we could put forward slash API. API is working. App.get slash anything, any path, oops, result dot send, anything is working. Okay. Also try .json and then try sending actual data in this format. Now we get similar to what you would get if you actually went to an API. I get it in JSON format. There's the message. This is JSON response. So this result.json, all the data that we get is going to be in JSON format. So there's no point in putting result.json for all of these. We could put middleware. If we say app.use express.json, then it'll automatically convert everything to this format for us. So if I say app.get just forward slash nothing. Wait, sorry, it doesn't automatically convert it to JSON, but it makes it so that we can use JSON data. Maybe. I actually forgot what the actual purpose was for app.use. So it's a middleware function in Express used to parse incoming requests with JSON payloads. It essentially allows the server to recognize and process JSON data sent in the body of a request. When a client sends data to the server in JSON format, this middleware parses the JSON and makes it available in the request.body as JavaScript object. Without it, request.body would be undefined for JSON request. Okay, so it's not for here. sending it. It's more for um, the data that comes in from the request, the request body. So we're not really doing that yet. So I guess we could take this out for now. So when it actually matters, we'll bring it back so we know what it's actually for. Anyways, we need to connect to MongoDB. We haven't done that yet. So we know our Express is working. Cool. Now let's use Mongoose and connect to MongoDB. So here's my connection string that I needed. I'm going to copy that. And let's say mongoose.connect. Let me delete all this stuff it's automatically adding. We need mongoose.connect. And then inside quotes, paste in that connection string that I copied from over there. Then after that, you can add whatever, use new. I don't know if we need all this stuff. We could just maybe delete that to simplify things. Okay, this is more simple. So I'm going to say mongoose.connect, and I'm going to pass in the connection string that you get whenever you set up your cluster. So if you go through this, you sign up, eventually you're going to see the connection string. If you click drivers, then you'll see this, something like this. Okay, it's MongoDB plus server / David LAPC colon DB password. Oh, I need to replace DB password with the actual password. It says replace DB password with password for David LAPC database. And David LAPC is just a username that I created in the process of signing up for MongoDB and creating the cluster. That's something you'll do too. And then it'll get added there in your string. Okay, my password should be MongoBongo, I think. So I gotta replace this MongoBongo. Okay, so if this is correct and I correctly connected, we're gonna say once you connect, then console log connected to MongoDB Atlas successfully. If there's an error and I didn't connect, we're gonna see error connecting to MongoDB Atlas, comma error message. So this thing that you're seeing here is kind of new. We didn't learn this in 154, the .then .catch. Again, this has to do with promises. Anytime you're dealing with asynchronous requests that require time to execute, we could rewrite this, I think. How do we rewrite it though? I'm not going to rewrite it for now because I can't think of how to rewrite it at the moment. We'll just leave it like that. So dot then just says, connect. Okay, wait for the connection. Don't execute this until this is done. That's the only thing that dot then does, right? Because you could just put this here like this, right? You're gonna try to connect, then you're gonna try to console log, then you're gonna console log this if there's an error. But it normal JavaScript reads from top to bottom without really stopping and waiting for something to return any data. But by using dot then, we're waiting for this to complete, and then we're console logging that. And if this doesn't return an error, we'll do that. If it does give us an error, we'll catch that error and we'll display the error. Okay, but let's see if it connects. Well, we could see here actually connected to MongoDB Atlas successfully. I forgot I had NodeMon running, so when I saved it, I wasn't paying attention here, but see before this was error connecting to MongoDB. This was probably before I changed my password to MongoBongo. After I changed it, it started saying connected to MongoDB Atlas successfully. So we know we're connected. Okay, so try that. Once you have your MongoDB successfully connected, maybe we can try fetching some of the sample data. I haven't actually tried this. I haven't used MongoDB in a long time, so a little bit rusty here. Let's see how we can request the data. I think before we do any of that requesting stuff, we probably have to do we need to create a see if it has a way for us to actually browse collections. Maybe it gives us a sample. Oh, let's try a query here actually. Let's refresh this. db.posts.find. Remember, this is how you query according to W3 schools. Database.post.find, and then category news, but we're actually in the database, so I'm gonna try typing that like the first person there. Results 0. Okay, I did it wrong obviously. Do we have to do mflix.comments? Title Jurassic. Oh, maybe I had it right the first time. I just have to put quotes around name. And then I think the whole thing has to be wrapped in curly brackets. Yeah, okay, that works. So if you want to practice querying here in MongoDB, This is one example. I'm typing in name. So inside I'm just passing an object basically. It's an object with a name key and a value of Mercedes Tyler. And I press apply. Looks like it only gives me the what do you call it? The no, not collections. It only gives me the documents that call these documents, right? It only gives me the documents that have a name of Mercedes Tyler. So all of these have that name. So these are comments. Let's go to movies. Let's try to let's find movies that have um let's see cast. How do we okay, this would be a little bit more difficult. It's not as straightforward, right? Because for the cast, what if you're looking for movies that have a certain actor? I don't know any of these actors. Are these fake movies with fake names? Harry McCoy? Who's Harry McCoy? I don't know. These are probably made up. Question? Carla, did you have a question? Just turn on your camera.
No, yeah, I noticed that it was made up movies as well.
Oh,
I
there.
was gonna
Yeah.
say,
No wonder. I'm trying. I'm still trying to find someone I recognize. Okay.
yeah, 'cause
Okay. So they're fake movies. Anyways, how do we find someone that? Let's see. Mary Pickford. Let's say. I want to find movies with Mary Pickford. I'm guessing we would have to do um cast, but no, this wouldn't work, would it? Because it's an array. We can't really say cast Mary Pickford. We could maybe put an array. And that didn't work. Let's see, MongoDB um, find document containing array item. I think I was doing it right the way I did it, but it didn't work. Cast. Let's copy paste it just so we're sure. Oh yeah, now it worked. Okay, so yeah, it just gave me the one document that has George Barnes in it. If this was a real database, we'd kind of be able to confirm if that's. Let me try someone else. I wonder if any of these fake names show up in more than one movie. Just try one more name, like AC Abadi. Same. Okay, I guess they don't show up in more than one movie. But that's how you would filter or find things. We'll look at obviously different ways. There's gonna be like we're doing find basically, but the find part is automatically, I guess, inserted for us. If you're here, then or maybe it's this filter. I don't know, but anyways, this is just for MongoDB here. When we actually try to find the data from here, it's not gonna be that simple. We're gonna have to add a few more lines. I don't know if we are ready here to actually get the information query from that database, or do we need to create a model? Let's see. Okay, we have Mongoose is connected, but what about our database? Can we do db equals mongoose dot connect? I don't know if that's right. Okay, I'm just letting um Copilot just add all this stuff for me. I want to see if it'll work. We can't do post yet because for sending post requests, we need to use this thing postman. Or I think there's dependencies we can add to VS Code so we could send post requests. But right now we're just doing get request because get request is just easier. You just type it in a URL and it's a get request. So let's try app.getMovies, and then if we do that, we're gonna go to await db.movies.find. Although I don't know if we have a DB called movies. It's actually sample underscore mflix dot movies. So that's probably not gonna work. So let's go to localhost 3000. Say cannot get because we don't actually have a app.get for / nothing. I guess I deleted it. Now we do. Okay, welcome to the movie API. If we go to forward slash nothing, if we go to forward slash movies, and yeah, it didn't work. Because, yeah, our database is not called movies. It's db dot. That's what we need to figure out. Um, Oops, did I close MongoDB? No, it's here. Okay, at least we got an error this time. Error fetching movies. Okay. If we do just db dots movies, no error. If we do db dot sample, I don't know if that's a good thing or like what if I put something completely random here? A B C D. Okay, it looks like no, we don't need to put sample movies. It looks like this is more correct because if I put a random name, we still get the error. Maybe we need something more specific because movies. Try comments. Technically, I think we're doing it right, but I don't know. We'll have to figure it out next class because we're out of time. But we're getting there. So create your MongoDB cluster, sign up for MongoDB, create your cluster, install MongoDB with npm install MongoDB, install Mongoose. At least see if your connection is successful. I know we're at least connecting successfully. I connected to MongoDB Atlas successfully. We know that part's working. Just not fetching the data. Just empty. Okay. I don't know. I feel like this dot find maybe needs to be more specific. maybe we should. But no, technically, if you don't pass anything in there, it should just give you all of them, right? I would only put something like, yeah, it doesn't work. So if you were gonna get something specific, you could pass in your search object just like we were doing it in here in MongoDB, like this, for example. Copy and paste that in here. Find that, but we're missing one step, so not working quite yet. Anyway, sign out should be posted already. I'll have to see you guys Wednesday. And stop recording.